you're describing almost seems like a mismatch in vocabulary or language between teams.
I always joke that it's not even like we're speaking French and Spanish. We're speaking like Thai and Greek, like a whole different character sets. And so it is important to have a common language. And I don't think we get an A plus in our common language even today. One of the common languages we speak is money, top line metrics, and close rate. In the end, like you have an output metric, which is, are we going to hit our plan, our top line, and our net revenue plan? And that's a good one to bring the engineers into, because we don't talk about it necessarily at stand-ups. Sometimes we do. They don't come to the monthly business review or the weekly business review, the engineers, so they don't see any of these things. So it's important for us to put things in context for them. And it is like if we're closing less deals, which is leading to lower valuation, which is directly affecting our compensation. That is one way to translate. So I always do a monthly stand up with a team describing what's going on in the business. Where are we at with the revenue plan?
I want to go back to something that you were talking about further, and we're talking a lot here today about the one thing that we value greatly and use as kind of a maxim, which is get the engineer close to the customer. And there's merits in doing that goes both ways: sales benefits and then also the engineer's benefit. But to just set a little bit of context here, right? So we are, we're a solution that is pretty heavily focused on large enterprise companies, which is to say that we're in sort of consultative enterprise solution selling. And in the supply chain industry, big enterprise customers, it's an industry that is largely built on customized solutions that have been provided by big legacy service providers like big 3PLs, big transportation management companies, et cetera. So customers are used to very customized solutions that are very specialized towards their business. And that manifests itself in the form of WMS technology systems that are highly configured to run a specific client's business, or TMS feature functionality that's highly configured to run a client's business. The drawback of the traditional solutions is that it tends to be kind of rigid, and there's a lot of fixed costs and CapEx required to go stand those things up. Standing up WMS or technology solutions with traditional service providers can be very, very expensive. And we're kind of the antithesis of that. We're fast, nimble, on demand. And so when we go out and when we sell to a customer, we're talking about our value props to a customer. We sell on the merits of the business model and the unlimited scalability and the flexibility. And when you have the engineer in that conversation, what happens is, and the engineer gets excited too, because you see the customer starting to buy in, and then you hear the customer talk about this one specific little thing that they need that is a technical requirement that we don't have. Right. And so now we're having a discussion, or the wheels start turning, where this is the empathy builder part, where the engineer hears that and they get excited like the salesperson does, like, oh man, like we've got this client, it's a multi-million-dollar opportunity, and we just got to close this one little gap from a tech perspective. We got to go build this thing or this feature that this customer needs for them to be able to do business with us. And then I think that puts into context the thing you said earlier, Dave, where if you don't get engineers out in front of the customer often, when salespeople bring these opportunities to you, and you say, oh, this client's super bought in, it's this multi-million-dollar opportunity, but we just got to build this one little thing. And then the engineer says, oh, but why do they really need that? Do they really need that? Why can't you just push back?
Yeah, I think you've heard this maxim that don't bring the engineer solutions, bring them problems, right? And because what happens if the salesperson is carrying the requirements from the customer to the engineer, there's either stuff lost in translation, or they may not deeply understand it. And so what we found often happens is when we put a product person or an engineer in front of the customer, they can have a conversation about why do you really need that? Or what if we did this? And they have the context of what we can build that's easy and what we can build that's hard. If you're playing telephone in there, it's much less effective. And we've had at least 2 or 3 cases where we had a hard requirement to do this, and we sent our lead product manager out, and he's like, oh, well, could we do this instead? And they're like, oh, sure, that would work great. And so reducing the number of links in the telephone game is super important.